where we grow our awareness instead of our judgment. And when we do that, what happens to us is we end up becoming so much more resilient. Resiliency. There's a lot of Instagram nuggets for parents around teaching your kids resiliency. I was chatting with a founder friend of mine that is practicing underwater deep diving and doing it by just holding her breath. This sport of free diving, she was saying she got into it over the last 2 years, and she even went and got a coach to get really good at it. It's kind of it's a great founder. How you do anything is how you do everything. And so she was like, I'm not just going to do it. I'm going to learn how to do it really, really right. And she went for a week with one of the best coaches in the world, traveled halfway around the world to learn from him. And one of the things I said, what were the big takeaways that you had from your work with him? She said, honestly, the biggest one was this stat he told me that when you think you're out of breath, you've only used up about 40% of the single breath. Because in free diving, you take a single breath, dive as deeply as you can under the ocean. And she said that when your mind is telling you you're out of oxygen, you really only used up about 40%. You can go over 2 times further than what the mind tells you you can do. That, the stat not only blew her away, she said it just really reoriented her approach, her mentality, and her awareness to this sport that she had taken. And it also blew my mind just thinking about the overlap between that sport and this philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. That there is this strong message within us that is so loud and so certain of what is, coming from the mind that is wildly off from reality. In other words, when your mind is telling you, we're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. They don't have the framework in this sport, at least her coach didn't teach her any framework that would give her some terminology like in Vedanta of a mind and an intellect are 2 inner equipments that are talked about within this philosophy. But she did use the language that when your mind starts to say that, you have to shut it down, override what the mind is doing. Vedanta just gets explicit and says, the intellect is what overrides the mind. It's what guides it. Is the adult in the room, as I say within this philosophy. And you have to override it, she said. Shut it down. And tell it that it's wrong. Tell your body that you're totally okay. And not only totally okay, but it's not like you got 10% more in the tank, but you got 60% more. This gets into the notion within Vedanta around resiliency, or what makes us resilient in the face of challenges, in the face of discomfort, in the face of failure, within this philosophy that it's not about being tough. It's not about courage. Resiliency, whether it's parenting, whether it's a child, whether it's ourselves in our career, ourselves in any pursuit, ourselves in diving 50 meters below the surface of the ocean. Resiliency actually comes down to awareness. Aware of what is. Not crumbling because we think we can't go on unless we have our teddy, our favorite toy, or think we can't go on because our mind is telling us we're going to run out of oxygen, we're going to die. But something else to step in and says, no, we actually can go a lot further than this. Something else that steps in and says, actually, no, we can handle this. We don't need the teddy. We don't need the adult equivalent. We don't need to hit the bottle after a really tough day at work. We don't need to indulge 4 hours of TV to escape what we're feeling. We can actually handle it all. And that resiliency, it builds the more that the understanding builds. See, within this philosophy, courage is not needed when understanding is present. It's not courage for her to keep going beyond when the mind is saying, we're going to run out of oxygen. That's not courage. That's just understanding. She said, after a while, you learn the pattern. And then it doesn't even bother you anymore because you're like, oh yeah, this is when my mind's saying I'm out and I actually have a whole lot longer to go. And I said, do you remain calm in that? She said, you have to, because any unnecessary agitation, any unnecessary stress is going to consume more oxygen. So not only do you, but you learn that you have to remain calm to go as far as you can down. Now, I'm not compelled to go swimming deeply into the ocean on a single breath, but in any pursuit of ours, that is so valuable to learn. And not only can we go 2.5 times further than our mind might scream at us, telling us otherwise, but also the fact that resiliency is so much more of a function of awareness and understanding than it is courage or blind faith or being tough. What's made me resilient in my career, for example, is knowing how little I actually feel touched by failure. So much stronger, so much more capable on the other side of failure because it's no longer scary. Because I realize all of the good that happens within it. You get a PhD in business, life, and yourself when you fail in a startup that you put 2, 3, 4 years, 6 years into building. You get a PhD, you benefit. Every PhD costs you something, but it's an exchange, a worthy exchange where you get more than you put in. And that's been the case with every failure. And then jumping into the next thing, a 4th business, a 5th business, a 6th business, ends up, it gets simpler and simpler, easier and easier. Not because there's no failure, but and not because of courage of, each time it hurts more and more and more. And I'm just going to build up my courage, my pain tolerance. It's not that at all. It's actually just seeing behind the veil and realizing, this doesn't hurt that much. And I've failed forward quite a bit. I moved forward in all the things that I care about. I didn't move backwards. So there's a reorientation with challenges, a reorientation with failure that happens that makes it seem like the outside, perhaps that you're more resilient through being tough or courageous, but internally it's just awareness, seeing things more clearly. It's understanding. Resiliency has so much more to do with awareness and understanding than our culture gives it credit for. And this philosophy is all about cultivating awareness. Yesterday's episode, which was on post-determination, check it out, and these fit quite nicely together, where we grow our awareness instead of our judgment. And when we do that, what happens to us is we end up becoming so much more resilient. And it's not for the reasons people outside of us might think. Internally, we know it's because, my mind is saying one thing, or other people are saying one thing. but I know that there's another truth going on. I know that there is a higher reality than what my mind might be saying or what those around me might be saying. Imagine if my friend didn't have that stat, that profound stat that shifted her thinking so massively from a great coach that I'm sure they worked on form, they worked on various methods, but it was that knowledge that transformed her relationship with her action, with her sport. Imagine what knowledge of what life is or what we are and what we're capable of. Imagine how that can transform our relationship with ourselves, others, and our work. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.